He never thought a simple visit to the courthouse would change his life forever. The papers were supposed to be routine, just another day in a divorce he thought he could control. But when his husband leaned in and whispered, "I'll take everything from you," the air seemed to freeze. What happened next wasn't just about money or possessions. It was about power, fear, and a cruelty that nobody saw coming. In that moment, he realized his life, his freedom, and even his dignity were on the line. How far would one person go to destroy someone else? It had all started as an ordinary morning. The sunlight streamed through the apartment windows, brushing against familiar furniture and quiet corners that had once felt like home. He went about his day, performing the motions he'd repeated countless times, brewing coffee, checking emails, listening to the soft hum of life outside. For a moment, it felt normal, safe, predictable. Behind the calm exterior, a storm had been quietly building. The divorce had been contentious from the beginning, not over money or property alone, but over control, over pride, over the deep resentment that had festered for years. He had thought the court was a place of fairness, a neutral ground where truth and justice might prevail. He had believed that rational arguments and evidence would protect him. But as he walked into the courthouse that morning, the familiar sense of security evaporated. The grand marble halls, the echoing footsteps, the cold, rigid benches, all of it felt suddenly intimidating. Faces blurred past him, strangers and officials alike, but one presence cut through the crowd like a knife, the very person who had vowed to dismantle his life piece by piece. The papers clutched in his hand felt heavier than they should, as if the weight of what was to come was pressing down on him. Every step toward the courtroom was measured, cautious. Every breath was a silent reminder that the battle ahead was no longer abstract. It was real, it was immediate, and it would change everything. The hearing began quietly, almost deceptively so. The judge called names, shuffled papers, and murmured procedural phrases that seemed distant and irrelevant. He felt a tightening in his chest, a rhythm of anxiety and anticipation that refused to subside. Then it was their turn. The moment their eyes met, the tension became almost physical, a current running between them that no one else could see, but that he could feel deep in his bones. As the claims were read, he realized the extent of the trap. The accusations weren't just about assets, they were about character, about morality, about painting him as undeserving, untrustworthy, somehow a villain in his own life. Every statement, every carefully chosen word was designed to strip him of credibility. He tried to maintain composure, but with each passing moment, the walls of the courtroom seemed to close in. Outside the courtroom, whispers began to circulate. Subtle glances, half smiles, and the occasional nod. It was as if the entire system had already made up its mind, and he was only discovering it now. He felt the sting of isolation, the creeping fear that despite his preparation, he was utterly exposed. Then came the first shock, hidden details he had never anticipated. Emails, photographs, even mundane conversations, carefully selected to portray him as careless, irresponsible, even cruel. The room shifted, the tension rising with each revelation. It was no longer just a dispute over property, it was a psychological assault. Every claim was a hammer, striking at his reputation, his dignity, his sense of safety. He tried to respond, calmly, logically, but his voice seemed to vanish in the vastness of the courtroom. Each explanation was met with skepticism or silence, and as the minutes stretched, the emotional weight became unbearable. Fear, anger, and disbelief mingled into a cocktail of helplessness. How could someone plan so meticulously to take everything from another person? How could he fight a battle that seemed rigged from the start? Just when it seemed he might crumble entirely, a subtle pattern emerged. Small inconsistencies, tiny cracks in the otherwise perfect narrative constructed against him. A hesitant glance from a witness, a minor contradiction in testimony. He seized the opportunity, focusing, analyzing, holding on to a fragile hope that justice could still be found. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with anticipation. Every heartbeat felt amplified, every second stretching into eternity. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing as the evidence and testimonies were weighed. He had prepared for every scenario, yet the tension made preparation feel irrelevant. This was no longer about documents. It was about perception, about survival. Then came the decisive moment, the revelation that would turn the entire proceeding upside down. A single document, overlooked by his opponent, contradicted the claims and exposed manipulation. Gasps echoed softly through the room as the balance shifted. For a brief, suspended second, it felt as if the world itself held its breath. The impact was immediate. Counselors whispered, witnesses exchanged nervous glances, and the courtroom seemed to tilt as reality settled in. He felt a surge of adrenaline, a mix of relief and fierce determination. The nightmare he had been thrust into was not over, but the tide had turned. Every accusation that had seemed absolute now wavered. Every threat of destruction trembled in the face of undeniable truth. His opponent's expression faltered, the veneer of control cracking for the first time. The room seemed to vibrate with tension and revelation, and in that moment, he realized the nightmare was not a conclusion. It was a battleground where courage, evidence, and persistence could still prevail. By the end of the hearing, the outcome was clear. The claims meant to devastate him had been dismantled, piece by piece. Victory was not just legal, it was personal. It was proof that careful observation, unwavering focus, and the refusal to surrender could turn even the darkest scenario into a triumph. He left the courtroom forever changed. The fear, the humiliation, the creeping dread, they remained as memories, lessons etched into his consciousness. But alongside them was a profound awareness of resilience, of how justice could emerge even in the most orchestrated storms. What had threatened to consume him had become a testament to perseverance. The experience lingered, a shadow and a teacher in equal measure. He understood the fragility of security, the ease with which power could be misused, and the quiet strength that comes from standing one's ground. Yet beyond his personal journey, the story reflected a broader reality. Lives are constantly shaped by inequality, manipulation, and cruelty. How many battles go unseen? How many victories are quietly won without recognition? The question he now posed to himself and to the world was simple but powerful. In the face of injustice, will courage prevail, or will fear dictate the outcome? The courtroom had been a battlefield, but it had also been a mirror, revealing the harsh truths of human nature and the transformative potential of resilience. And as he stepped into the sunlight outside, he carried not just relief, but a sense of purpose, a resolve to confront whatever challenges lay ahead, and a story that demanded to be remembered.